All right, so BTC has managed to fall out of its range, and exactly as predicted yesterday, we did not lose the range. We covered this extensively in yesterday's video, how it's not over until it's over, and how this was clearly still deviation territory, and lo and behold, that is exactly what ended up happening. Bitcoin is now back inside of this sideways range for the weekend trading session, which is absolutely fantastic because it keeps us in the game, okay? I think it's going to be a fair bit harder to knock Bitcoin out of this range than it is to take Bitcoin lower from already being out of the range, right? If you're still in the range, it's a lot harder to drop compared to if you're already outside of the range, which I think buys us a level of security for this market. And I think that's really useful with the S&P 500 in mind as well. Obviously, traditional finance is going to kind of tell us the direction that crypto is moving in broad terms for the most part. And if we've got such a strong S&P 500 here, I would certainly expect that strength to spill over to Bitcoin. And I think that's what we've been seeing here. So we're back in the range now, which is absolutely fantastic. Bitcoin's dominance is still fairly high. It hasn't returned back down to the lows, but it looks like it will. So that could spell some more opportunities in the altcoin market as well. And it also means that our support levels were back in play. It means that this 116.9K level that Bitcoin has been enjoying support from is now back in play. I wouldn't say that it's super reliable, but I think it's definitely a level that people are still going to be looking to take longs off, which makes sense if we recover the range, and that's a pretty good sign that bears are not in control, which can definitely give bulls a little bit more confidence to start going long in these markets as well, which is fantastic. And the other side of this is it also means that our resistance is in play, which is at about 120K. You can also lower it and say that a second level of resistance is going to be a little bit closer at about 119. I think both are completely valid, and these are levels that I would now be expecting Bitcoin to kind of, find itself rising up toward in the next hours and days, just given the fact that Bitcoin has managed to recover back into this range right here. Now, if we take a look at some of our altcoins, here is Ethereum against Bitcoin consolidating at resistance here, and this is a macro resistance level against Bitcoin, so it's absolutely fantastic to see Ethereum slowing down a little bit, gathering a little bit more strength before potentially punching up higher again, which it definitely looks like it wants to do. That doesn't mean it will do it, but it definitely looks like it wants to. And if that does end up happening, we could be seeing a nice big explosion going up as well. And this applies to other coins as well, right? Other coins such as XRP are not quite as high as they were previously. They haven't actually been able to hold on to that much strength, but they're still holding pretty well and actually defining new support levels. Bear in mind, these are levels that XRP has never really traded at before, even back in 2017 and 18. It didn't really stick around in these levels for too long. So we are, essentially establishing support levels here for the first time ever, which could definitely start to bring us some more opportunities for these markets as far as taking positions here, which is, of course, very, very exciting as well. And what this means for Bitcoin, look, if Bitcoin ends up kind of losing this level once again, then it means that we're not really holding on to our support level particularly well, right? We've already deviated out of it once. We had these couple of wicks here, which don't really count to me, but this one here is definitely going to be a bigger point of concern. So if Bitcoin does end up dropping down, then again, I think the same support levels we've been watching for a couple of weeks now are still in play, right? I think this 110, 111K level, really makes sense for Bitcoin to capture a little bit of support if it does end up dropping. At this point, of course, if it does kind of fall down here, that could result in a bigger drawdown, maybe a drawdown that lasts more time, maybe for a month or two, which I know sounds terrible, but that's just what the market, that's what the charts are showing me right now. If it sounds bad and I don't say it, then I wouldn't be delivering what I promised you guys on this YouTube channel. So unfortunately, we gotta stick to the truth. I don't think it's unfortunate at all. It just means that we're being cognizant of reality here, and that's, like I said, if Bitcoin does end up dropping, things could get, a little bit more drawn out. But if not, like I said, we're still in a pretty good structure. On the daily time frame here, we're just consolidating. We're doing really, really well. Our daily EMA ribbon has now conclusively given us some support, which is absolutely fantastic. It's exactly what we were expecting. And on the 4-hour time frame, we're still making good use of that Ichimoku cloud right here. We're not out of it yet, and it definitely looks like we could get out of it. Just according to this, it looks like this has been working for us. But because we've been using this support without actually trending higher again, our support is starting to close, right? Bear in mind that it was previously, quite a wide Ichimoku cloud, stretching something a little bit like this, but right now it has definitely shortened, which is an indication that we're essentially running out of time. Okay, if the bulls are going to pull something off, they're going to have to do it ideally, before the end of July, because if it kind of starts bleeding on into August, I think that could end up swinging that pendulum back into the control of the bears. And I think one of the concerning points is, of course, going to be the S&P 500. We covered this yesterday, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to talk about it again for a couple of days because of the weekend, pausing trading here. But the S&P 500 has been going up pretty much relentlessly now for a number of weeks, right? If we take a look at these candles, it's been up only since the end of June, and we're now at the end of July. So it's definitely been a pretty consistent uptrend for the S&P 500, and that's not inherently a problem. We can, we've done this before. We can definitely rally up more or less nonstop for a long time. But it is also, a time where I think, traders, market participants might be looking for pullbacks, and if that does end up happening, then of course, the S&P 500 has brilliant support down here. It's only 4% lower. It's its previous all-time high. It resulted in a big rejection for the S&P 500, so it definitely makes sense that the S&P does try to retest this level, whether that happens soon or whether that happens after some more time. It's probably, it's something that we end up seeing quite often. It might not happen. Obviously, that doesn't mean it has to happen, but it is something that we're quite familiar with, that we're actually quite welcoming, because when we get that kind of retest, when we get that kind of reset, that's what really allows us, our markets to just skyrocket and go crazy, right? So with all of that in mind, if the S&P is due for a bit of a pullback, that would probably drag Bitcoin down. But like I said, if that doesn't happen, then, we're essentially looking at potentially just, another kind of continuation pattern for Bitcoin here, where, this next leg could, pretty reasonably put Bitcoin up in the kind of $130,000 range. If we kind of measure what this flagpole looks like and extrapolate a target from the bottom of our range, this does still put us in the 130s. Actually, it puts us very close to the top of that range here. So I think a lot of signs still definitely pointing toward that particular direction here. Obviously, if we take an even more kind of macro view at things, and let's say we zoom out onto the daily time frame here, we can also see this larger consolidation zone giving us a very similar speculative target, right? If we go ahead and kind of draw this from the kind of bottom here, this is giving us a target between, essentially 134 to 139K, which I think is super reasonable. A lot of my analysis has been pointing to those ranges for a good few weeks now. And that's going to be something that I'm continuing to watch out for. I really do think that Bitcoin can manage to get its way up there, especially if we continue to have those blessings of the S&P 500 and traditional finance as well, which I think is pretty cool. And what does this mean for the altcoin market? Like I said, brilliant opportunities. We've already covered a few of them on XRP, on Ethereum. Let's take a look at Solana, though. Solana is now sitting above, only slightly above its support level here. It's not making brilliant use of this level, but if it can, it's probably, it's already started to break out. The one that happened over here failed a little bit, but the next time we got a breakout here. So I definitely think that there is a chance for, Solana, whether it does something like this and then goes up, or whether it just kind of uses this here. I think there's definitely potential for coins like Solana to also run if these markets manage to maintain their bullish posture, which is definitely quite exciting. Let's take a quick look at the Fear and Greed Index. See what that's saying over here. We're at a reading of 72, literally just completely flatlining here. Sentiment, at least from these numbers, is not changing too much, which is neither here nor there. It's neither a bad thing nor a good thing. I think for the most part, it's probably a good thing. It means that we're, weathering these levels pretty well. It probably means that there's going to be a lot of supply of BTC, of altcoin, mainly BTC, that does not want to be sold right now. And if Bitcoin doesn't want to be sold, but the market is kind of, it's got a prevailing bias to the upside, well, that's probably going to result in some really quite explosive breakouts. And the really good news, obviously, that we're quite intimately familiar with now is just the idea that if Bitcoin does start clearing resistance levels, especially considering that we've never traded up in this price level before, other than what I've just circled, it could mean that there's very little resistance for Bitcoin stopping it from going higher, because who wants to sell if it's just broken out and it's just consolidated and then broken out again? You know what I mean? I think that's a setup that a lot of people are going to be very, very excited to see. Probably not too many people are going to be looking to take profits, at least super soon because of that. I think many of the people that wanted to take profits had a really nice long time frame to do that here. If we measure what this is a 50-day time frame here that Bitcoin Bitcoin was essentially consolidating, but just at its all-time highs at about 110 down to about 99. I think this was a brilliant opportunity for those that did want to sell off, and we can see how that played out, because as soon as that breakout did come in, there was absolutely no selling. It took 3 days for the price to go up by 10%, which is a big deal for Bitcoin at this point in its life cycle, and I think that could definitely end up repeating again, maybe with another 10% move. We don't necessarily need anything too crazy, but another 10% move does put Bitcoin toward the top of the 120k range, and it's only slightly further from there. 15% puts us quite comfortably inside of that 130 to 140k range, so very much within reach, and I think it is just kind of going to be reliant on traditional finance. But a quick video for you guys today. I really hope you have enjoyed this one. You know what to do. If you have, smash up those likes, subscribe, tick the bell, check out the exchanges linked below for amazing bonuses. You get aggressive bonuses on both of these exchanges when you start trading using these links down below. Bybit remains the best in the game, there's no doubt about it, and 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗓𝗪 does bring you exclusive chart setups from our team, where we're kind of showing you, some more updates on coins that we're looking at and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. So check that out if you're interested as well. Of course, only if you're not from a restricted region. But with that, ladies and gents, really hope you have enjoyed this video. You know what to do. If you have, smash up those likes, subscribe, tick the bell, all that good stuff, and we'll see you all in the next one.